Do you ever lie awake at 3 a.m. replaying that conversation from 5 years ago, wishing you could reach back through time and shake some sense into your former self? What if the very thing keeping you trapped in cycles of regret and self-condemnation could become your greatest source of strength and wisdom? Here's a counterintuitive truth that will change how you see your past forever. The person you were yesterday is not your enemy. They're your greatest teacher, and forgiving them is the key to unlocking the person you're meant to become. Recent neuroscience research reveals that our brains are literally rewired by self-forgiveness, creating new neural pathways that lead to greater resilience, creativity, and emotional freedom. Yet most people spend decades carrying the weight of past mistakes like invisible shackles, never realizing they hold the key to their own liberation. Welcome to Splendor, where every week, we unlock new strategies to help you grow, heal, and step powerfully into your potential. You're listening to the Grow Every Week podcast, a community of curious minds and compassionate hearts committed to personal transformation. Before we dive deeper, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell, so you never miss a new episode or audiobook release. If this message of self-forgiveness resonates with you, please like this podcast, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your engagement helps us reach more listeners and build a supportive space for everyone on the journey of self-discovery. Introduction: every person reading this book carries invisible baggage, not the kind you check at airports, but the emotional weight of past decisions, missed opportunities, and moments when you fell short of your own expectations. This weight manifests in countless ways: the entrepreneur who can't celebrate current success because they're still haunted by a failed business from their 20s, the parent who beats themselves up daily for losing their temper with their children years ago, the person who sabotages relationships because they believe they don't deserve love after past betrayals. The hidden cost of self-condemnation. Recent research from 2025 reveals a startling truth about self-forgiveness. People who remain stuck in self-condemnation often describe feeling as if past events are still happening. The emotional weight feels as vivid and present as if the mistakes occurred yesterday. This psychological phenomenon, what researchers call temporal fusion, keeps individuals trapped in cycles of shame and regret that can persist for decades. The cost is staggering. Studies consistently show that people who struggle with self-forgiveness experience higher rates of depression and anxiety, compromised immune function and physical health, impaired decision-making abilities, damaged relationships and decreased life satisfaction, reduced creativity and willingness to take beneficial risks. But here's where the story takes a hopeful turn. Self-forgiveness is not just beneficial, it's learnable. Why this book matters now: we live in an age of unprecedented self-awareness but also unprecedented self-judgment. Social media creates constant comparison opportunities, while our hyperconnected world means our mistakes feel more visible and permanent than ever. The pressure to be perfect has never been higher, yet the tools for dealing with imperfection have never been more crucial. This book isn't about forgetting your past or pretending mistakes didn't happen. It's about fundamentally transforming your relationship with your former self, moving from prosecutor to compassionate witness, from enemy to ally. Drawing on cutting-edge research in psychology, neuroscience, and trauma therapy, we'll explore evidence-based techniques that can free you from the prison of past regrets. What you'll discover over the following pages: you'll learn why your brain is neurologically wired to hold on to past mistakes and how to rewire it for self-compassion. The crucial difference between guilt and shame, and why understanding this distinction can transform your healing journey. Practical, research-backed techniques for processing difficult emotions and reframing painful memories. How to create a new narrative about your past that acknowledges growth rather than condemning failure. Strategies for preventing future cycles of self-condemnation while maintaining healthy accountability. The promise of this journey: by the end of this book, you won't be the same person who started reading it. Not because you'll have erased your past, but because you'll have made peace with it. You'll have learned to see your former self not as an enemy to defeat, but as a fellow traveler who did their best with the resources, knowledge, and emotional capacity they had at the time. The path ahead isn't always easy, but it's profoundly liberating. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Acknowledging the weight. Why forgiveness matters now. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. Carl Rogers. The hidden prison we build. Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the same ritual she'd performed every morning for the past 3 years. But instead of seeing a successful marketing director with a loving family, she saw the woman who had an affair and nearly destroyed her marriage. Despite her husband's forgiveness and their rebuilt relationship, Sarah couldn't forgive herself. The weight of that mistake colored every success, every moment of happiness, every attempt at feeling worthy of love. Sarah's story illuminates a profound truth. We can be our own harshest wardens, building prisons of shame and regret that trap us long after others have moved on. Recent research reveals just how common and costly this pattern is. The science of self-condemnation, the neurobiology of rumination. When we repeatedly replay past mistakes, we're not just mentally rehashing events, we're literally rewiring our brains. Neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hanson explains that our brains have a negativity bias, meaning they're evolutionarily programmed to hold on to negative experiences more strongly than positive ones. This served our ancestors well when remembering which berries were poisonous could mean the difference between life and death. But in our modern world, this same mechanism keeps us trapped in cycles of self-criticism. Brain imaging studies show that people who struggle with self-forgiveness have hyperactive default mode networks, the brain regions responsible for self-referential thinking and rumination. When these networks are constantly firing, individuals experience what researchers call mental time travel, where past events feel psychologically present and emotionally immediate. The physiology of shame. Shame isn't just an emotion, it's a full-body experience with measurable physiological effects. When we hold on to self-condemnation, our bodies remain in a state of chronic stress. Research shows that people struggling with self-forgiveness have elevated cortisol levels that suppress immune function, increased inflammatory markers linked to cardiovascular disease, disrupted sleep patterns that impair cognitive function and emotional regulation, altered neurotransmitter levels affecting mood and motivation. Dr. Brené Brown's groundbreaking research on shame reveals that it literally changes our posture and breath patterns. Shame makes us want to disappear, to make ourselves small, to hide from the world. This physical contraction mirrors the psychological contraction that keeps us stuck in patterns of self-attack. The cultural context of self-forgiveness, the perfectionism epidemic. We're living through what researchers call a perfectionism epidemic. Studies from the past 3 decades show dramatic increases in perfectionist tendencies among college students, with rates nearly tripling since the 1990s. Social media amplifies this trend, creating endless opportunities for comparison and self-judgment. Perfectionism and self-forgiveness are fundamentally incompatible. Perfectionists set impossibly high standards, then brutally attack themselves when they inevitably fall short. They mistake self-compassion for self-indulgence and believe that harsh self-criticism is necessary for motivation and improvement. The achievement trap. Our achievement-oriented culture teaches us that our worth is contingent on our performance. This creates what psychologist Tim Kasser calls materialistic value orientation, the belief that success, image, and external validation determine our value as human beings. When we make mistakes or fail to meet our goals, we don't just feel disappointed in our behavior, we feel fundamentally flawed as people. This cultural message is particularly toxic because it conflates who we are with what we do. A person's essence, their inherent worth and dignity, becomes entangled with their track record, their achievements, and their ability to meet external standards. The cost of carrying past burdens, relationship impacts. When we can't forgive ourselves, we inevitably damage our relationships with others. People who struggle with self-forgiveness often push away love and support because they believe they don't deserve it, become defensive or angry when others try to offer reassurance or perspective, project their self-criticism onto others, becoming hypercritical or perfectionist in their expectations, engage in self-sabotaging behaviors that confirm their negative self-beliefs, struggle with intimacy because vulnerability feels too dangerous when you believe you're fundamentally flawed. Research shows that people with high levels of self-compassion have stronger, more satisfying relationships. They're better able to apologize genuinely, take responsibility without defensiveness, and maintain emotional availability even during conflict. Creative and professional impacts. Self-condemnation doesn't just affect our personal lives, it significantly impacts our professional and creative capacities. When we're trapped in cycles of self-criticism, we avoid taking necessary risks for fear of making more mistakes, struggle with decision-making because we're paralyzed by the possibility of choosing wrong, procrastinate or avoid challenges to prevent potential failure, discount our successes and focus obsessively on our shortcomings, experience creative blocks because creativity requires psychological safety and self-trust. A 2025 study published in the Journal of Creative Behavior found that individuals with higher levels of self-compassion showed greater creative flexibility and were more willing to pursue innovative solutions even when facing setbacks. The hidden health crisis. Perhaps most concerning is the physical toll of prolonged self-condemnation. Research consistently shows that people who struggle with self-forgiveness have higher rates of cardiovascular disease and hypertension, autoimmune disorders and chronic inflammation, depression and anxiety disorders, substance abuse and addictive behaviors, sleep disorders and chronic fatigue. One longitudinal study following participants over 15 years found that individuals with low self-compassion had nearly twice the risk of developing major health problems compared to those who practiced self-forgiveness. The forgiveness paradox. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The harder we are on ourselves, the less likely we are to change or grow. This seems counterintuitive to many people who believe that harsh self-criticism is necessary for motivation and improvement. But research consistently shows the opposite. Why self-criticism backfires. Self-criticism activates what neuroscientists call the threat detection system, the same neural networks that respond to physical danger. When this system is activated, our brains enter a defensive state that prioritizes immediate survival over learning and growth. In this state, we're more likely to make impulsive decisions based on fear rather than wisdom, engage in defensive behaviors that protect our ego rather than promote growth, avoid challenges that could lead to learning and improvement, focus on short-term relief rather than long-term solutions. The self-compassion alternative. Self-compassion, by contrast, activates what researchers call the caregiving system, neural networks associated with nurturing, growth, and learning. When this system is online, we're more likely to take responsibility for our actions without becoming overwhelmed by shame, learn from our mistakes rather than ruminate on them, take appropriate risks for growth and development, maintain emotional stability during challenging times, Extend understanding and forgiveness to others. Dr. Kristen Neff's research shows that self-compassionate people are actually more motivated to change and improve, not less. They're more likely to stick with difficult goals, bounce back from setbacks, and maintain healthy behaviors over time. Breaking free from the past's grip, the moment of recognition. The journey towards self-forgiveness often begins with a moment of recognition, a sudden awareness of how much energy we've been spending on past regrets and self-condemnation. This might come during a quiet moment of reflection, a conversation with a friend, or even while reading a book like this one. For many people, this recognition is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it offers hope for change, terrifying because it means acknowledging how much time and energy we've wasted on self-attack. The choice point. Once we recognize the cost of our self-condemnation, we reach what psychologists call a choice point, a moment where we can decide to continue down the familiar path of self-criticism or choose a different way forward. This choice isn't made once and then forgotten. It's made repeatedly, sometimes moment by moment, as we gradually retrain our minds towards self-compassion. Each time we notice the voice of self-criticism and choose to respond with understanding instead of attack, we're strengthening new neural pathways and weakening old ones. The ripple effect. What's remarkable about self-forgiveness is its ripple effect. When we learn to treat ourselves with compassion, we naturally become more compassionate toward others. We become better parents, partners, friends, and colleagues. We take healthier risks, pursue meaningful goals with greater persistence, and contribute more effectively to our communities. Research shows that self-compassionate people are more likely to volunteer and engage in pro-social behavior, support others during difficult times without becoming overwhelmed, take environmental and social responsibilities seriously, pursue meaningful work that aligns with their values, raise children with higher self-esteem and emotional intelligence. The path forward. As we conclude this first chapter, it's important to acknowledge that recognizing the need for self-forgiveness is just the beginning. The path ahead requires courage, patience, and practice. There will be setbacks and moments of doubt. But every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory against the patterns that have kept you trapped. In the next chapter, we'll begin the practical work of identifying the specific wounds and regrets that need healing. We'll explore how to distinguish between healthy accountability and destructive shame, and we'll begin the process of understanding your past self with the same compassion you would offer a dear friend facing similar challenges. Remember, you are not your mistakes. You are a human being worthy of love and compassion, especially from yourself. The journey towards self-forgiveness isn't about condoning harmful actions or avoiding responsibility. It's about recognizing your inherent worth while taking responsibility for your growth and healing. The prison door is unlocked. You've always held the key. Now it's time to walk through it. Chapter 2. Unpacking the what, identifying your past self's wounds. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi, The Archaeology of Pain. Marcus sits in his car outside his therapist's office, hands gripping the steering wheel as he stares at the building he's driven past dozens of times but never entered. At 42, this successful architect has achieved everything he thought he wanted: a thriving practice, a beautiful home, the respect of his peers. But inside, he carries a secret that feels like a stone in his chest. 15 years ago, he made a series of decisions that led to his first business partner's financial ruin and the end of their friendship. I was young and desperate, he tells himself, as he has countless times before. I didn't know it would destroy everything. But the explanations never seem to touch the deeper wound, the belief that he is, at his core, someone who will betray those who trust him. Marcus's story illustrates a crucial truth about self-forgiveness. Before we can heal our wounds, we must first understand exactly what those wounds are and how they were formed. The anatomy of self-condemnation, surface symptoms versus root wounds. Most people seeking self-forgiveness focus on surface symptoms rather than root wounds. They say things like, "I can't forgive myself for cheating on my partner, I feel terrible about losing my temper with my kids, I hate myself for not visiting my father before he died." While these events are certainly painful and worthy of processing, they often point to deeper wounds about identity and worth. The person who can't forgive themselves for cheating may be wrestling with deeper questions about whether they're capable of genuine love. The parent who lost their temper may be confronting fears about being fundamentally damaged or unsafe. The person who didn't visit their dying father may be grappling with beliefs about being selfish or unworthy of forgiveness. The 3 layers of self-condemnation. Research in trauma therapy reveals that self-condemnation typically operates on 3 interconnected levels. Layer 1, the event, the specific action, decision, or failure that triggers self-condemnation. Layer 2, the story, the meaning we assign to the event and its implications for our identity. Layer 3, the core belief, the fundamental belief about ourselves that the story reinforces or creates. Let's explore each layer in detail. Layer 1. Mapping your events, the inventory process. The first step in healing is creating an honest inventory of the events that trigger your self-condemnation. This isn't about wallowing in past mistakes or creating a comprehensive catalog of every wrong turn you've ever made. Instead, it's about identifying the specific experiences that still carry an emotional charge, the ones that make your stomach tighten or your heart race when you remember them. Exercise. The timeline of wounds. Take a piece of paper and draw a horizontal line representing your life from birth to present. Mark the major periods, childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, etc. Now, identify 5 to 7 specific events or decisions that you still struggle to forgive yourself for. For each event, note how old you were, what the circumstances were, what was happening in your life at the time, who else was involved, what the immediate consequences were, how long you've been carrying this regret. As you do this exercise, you may notice patterns. Perhaps your most painful regrets cluster around certain ages or life transitions. Maybe they all involve relationships, or career decisions, or family dynamics. These patterns offer valuable clues about your underlying wounds. Common categories of self-condemnation. Research reveals that most people's self-forgiveness struggles fall into several predictable categories: betrayal and trust wounds, breaking promises or commitments to important people, cheating on partners or breaking relationship agreements, violating the trust of friends, family, or colleagues, failing to keep confidences or spreading harmful information, caretaking and responsibility wounds, not being present for someone who needed you, failing to protect someone from harm, making decisions that hurt people you care about, not living up to your role as parent, partner, or friend. Achievement and performance wounds, major professional or academic failures, missed opportunities due to fear or poor decisions, financial mistakes that affected yourself or others, creative or entrepreneurial ventures that failed, moral and ethical wounds, acting against your values due to fear, greed, or pressure, hurting others through thoughtless or selfish behavior, participating in systems or situations you knew were wrong, compromising your integrity for personal gain, self-care and health wounds, damaging your body through addiction, self-harm, or neglect, engaging in risky behaviors that endangered yourself or others, ignoring mental health needs until crisis points, making choices that compromised your physical or emotional well-being. The specificity principle. One crucial aspect of identifying your wounds is getting specific about what exactly you're condemning yourself for. Vague self-criticism like, "I'm a terrible person," or "I always mess things up," is harder to heal than specific regrets about particular actions or decisions. From vague to specific. Vague: "I'm a bad parent." Specific: "I yelled at my daughter when she spilled juice, and I saw the fear in her eyes." Vague: "I ruined my marriage." Specific: "I chose to work late instead of going to my spouse's important presentation, and they felt unsupported during a crucial moment." This specificity is crucial because it allows us to separate our actions from our identity. We can take responsibility for specific behaviors while maintaining our sense of inherent worth. Layer 2. Decoding your stories, the meaning-making machine. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We can't simply experience events. We must interpret them, assign significance to them, and weave them into the larger narrative of our lives. This meaning-making process is largely unconscious and deeply influenced by our childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, and existing beliefs about ourselves. The story we tell ourselves about our past mistakes is often more damaging than the events themselves. Consider these two different stories about the same event. Story A: self-condemnation. "When I was 25, I got drunk at my best friend's wedding and gave an inappropriate speech that embarrassed everyone. This proves that I'm selfish and destructive, someone who ruins important moments for other people. I can't be trusted at significant events, and I don't deserve close friendships because I inevitably hurt the people I care about." Story B: self-compassion. "When I was 25, I was struggling with anxiety and imposter syndrome. At my best friend's wedding, I drank too much as a way to cope with my social anxiety, and I gave a speech that was inappropriate and hurtful. I was mortified and deeply sorry. This was a painful learning experience that taught me about the importance of healthy coping strategies and honest communication about my struggles." Same event, completely different implications. The first story turns a mistake into evidence of fundamental character defects. The second story places the mistake in context and frames it as part of a learning journey. Common destructive narratives. Certain destructive narratives appear repeatedly in people's stories about their past mistakes. The fundamental flaw narrative. "This mistake reveals who I really am at my core. Someone who is selfish, weak, destructive, or unlovable." The ruination narrative. "This mistake destroyed everything good in my life and proves that I sabotage anything worthwhile." The unchangeable narrative. "This mistake shows that I'm incapable of real change or growth. I'll always be this way." The unforgivable narrative. "This mistake was so terrible that it places me beyond the reach of forgiveness, love, or redemption." The responsible for everything narrative. "This mistake proves that I'm responsible for everyone's pain and that bad things happen to people because of me." The context exploration. One of the most powerful ways to begin shifting destructive narratives is to explore the context surrounding your past mistakes. Context doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does help us understand it, and understanding is the first step toward compassion. Contextual questions to explore. Personal context. What was happening in your life when this event occurred? What stress, trauma, or challenges were you dealing with at the time? What was your emotional and mental state? What resources, knowledge, or support did you have available? What were your intentions, even if the outcomes were harmful? Developmental context. How old were you? And what was your level of emotional and psychological maturity? What life experiences had you had that could inform better decision-making? What models of healthy behavior had you been exposed to? Cultural and social context. What were the cultural norms and expectations in your environment? What pressures or influences were you navigating? What examples of behavior were being modeled around you? What resources for help or guidance were available in your community? Historical context. How have your understanding and values evolved since this event? What have you learned about yourself, relationships, or life in general? How would you handle a similar situation now, given your current wisdom and resources? Layer 3. Uncovering core beliefs, the deepest wounds. Beneath specific events and the stories we tell about them lie our core beliefs about ourselves, fundamental assumptions about our worth, lovability, safety, and place in the world. These beliefs are often formed early in life and reinforced by subsequent experiences, including our own mistakes and failures. Common core beliefs that fuel self-condemnation, worth and value. I am fundamentally flawed or defective, I don't deserve good things in my life, my worth depends on my performance and achievements. I am only valuable when I'm pleasing others, lovability and connection. I am unlovable when people see who I really am, I will inevitably hurt or disappoint people who get close to me, I am too much, too little for other people, I don't belong anywhere or with anyone, safety and control. I am powerless to protect myself or others from harm, the world is dangerous, and I must be constantly vigilant, I cannot trust my own judgment or decisions, I am responsible for everyone's emotions and well-being. The belief archaeology process. Uncovering core beliefs requires gentle archaeological work, carefully brushing away layers of conscious thought to reveal the unconscious assumptions underneath. Exercise. The downward arrow technique. Choose one of your significant regrets and ask yourself, what does this event mean about me? Write down your first response, then ask the same question about that response. Continue asking, what does this mean about me? Until you reach a statement that feels fundamental and unchangeable. This is likely touching on a core belief. Example. Event. I yelled at my elderly mother when she asked me the same question for the 5th time. What does this mean about me? I'm impatient and mean. What does this mean about me? I'm not a good daughter. What does this mean about me? I'm selfish and only think about myself. What does this mean about me? I'm a bad person who hurts people I love. What does this mean about me? I'm fundamentally flawed and unworthy of love. The origins of core beliefs. Understanding where our core beliefs come from can be incredibly healing. Most of the beliefs that fuel self-condemnation were formed during childhood and adolescence, when our brains were still developing and we had limited ability to understand complex situations or protect ourselves from harmful messages. Common origins, family dynamics, messages about worth, performance, and acceptability received from parents and caregivers. Trauma experiences, events that overwhelmed our capacity to cope and created beliefs about danger, powerlessness, or self-blame. Cultural messaging, societal messages about success, gender roles, appearance, and acceptable behavior. Peer experiences, bullying, rejection, or exclusion experiences that created beliefs about belonging and acceptance. Religious or spiritual conditioning, messages about sin, unworthiness, or conditional divine love. The compassionate reframe. Once we've identified our core beliefs, we can begin the process of examining them with adult wisdom and compassion. This doesn't mean simply thinking positive thoughts or trying to convince ourselves that negative beliefs aren't true. Instead, it means approaching our beliefs with curiosity, understanding, and a commitment to truth that serves our growth rather than our suffering. Questions for compassionate reframing. What evidence supports this belief, and what evidence contradicts it? How has this belief protected me, even if it's also caused pain? What would I say to a dear friend who held this belief about themselves? How might this belief have made sense given my early experiences, even if it's not serving me now? What would be a more balanced, truthful, and compassionate belief to hold. The integration process. Moving from identification to understanding. Simply identifying your wounds, stories, and core beliefs isn't enough. Integration requires processing these discoveries with self-compassion and a commitment to healing. This integration process typically involves several phases. Phase 1. Acknowledgement. Honestly recognizing and naming what you've discovered without immediately trying to fix or change it. Phase 2. Emotional processing. Allowing yourself to feel the emotions that arise when you truly see your patterns and wounds: grief, anger, fear, sadness, or relief. Phase 3. Contextual understanding. Placing your experiences in their proper context and beginning to see your past self with more compassion and understanding. Phase 4. Meaning reconstruction. Consciously choosing new stories and beliefs that honor your pain while supporting your growth and healing. The patience requirement. This process cannot be rushed. Many people become frustrated when they identify their patterns but don't immediately feel different or stop struggling with self-condemnation. Healing happens in layers, and each layer has its own timeline. Research in neuroscience shows that changing established neural pathways, the brain circuits that support old beliefs and patterns, requires consistent practice over months or even years. But each moment of awareness and self-compassion strengthens new pathways and weakens old ones. Preparing for the journey ahead. As you complete this excavation process, you may feel raw, vulnerable, or overwhelmed. This is entirely normal and actually indicates that you're doing the deep work required for real change. You're not just addressing surface behaviors, you're touching the roots of patterns that may have been with you for decades. In the next chapter, we'll begin the process of looking at your past self and your past actions through the lens of compassion rather than condemnation. We'll explore how to shift from being your own prosecutor to being your own compassionate witness, someone who sees clearly but judges with wisdom rather than harshness. Remember, awareness is the first step toward freedom. Every wound you've identified, every story you've uncovered, every core belief you've recognized, these aren't evidence of how damaged you are. They're evidence of how much capacity you have for growth, healing, and transformation. Your past self did the best they could with the resources, knowledge, and emotional capacity they had at the time. Now you have new resources, deeper knowledge, and greater emotional capacity. The question isn't whether you deserve forgiveness, you do. The question is whether you're ready to give yourself the gift of compassion that will set you free. The excavation is complete. Now the real healing begins. Chapter 3. The Compassionate Reframe, Shifting Your Narrative. If you want to shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. If you want to get rid of something, you must first allow it to flourish. Lao Tzu. The Story Revolution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sits across from her patient, a 50-year-old man who has been carrying the weight of a drunk driving accident from his college years for nearly 3 decades. Despite the fact that no one was seriously injured and he immediately took responsibility, sought treatment, and never drove intoxicated again, he has built his entire adult identity around being someone who could have killed innocent people. Tell me, Dr. Rodriguez says gently, if your 20-year-old son came to you having made the same mistake, how would you respond to him? The man's eyes fill with tears. I would hold him, he whispers. I would tell him that one terrible decision doesn't define him. I would help him learn from it and become better. Then why, she asks, have you spent 30 years refusing to offer yourself the same compassion you would naturally give your child? This moment illustrates one of the most powerful tools in the self-forgiveness journey, learning to see yourself through the eyes of love rather than the lens of condemnation. The neuroscience of narrative change. How stories shape reality. Recent advances in neuroscience reveal that our brains don't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and actual memories. When we repeatedly tell ourselves harsh stories about our past, we're not just remembering events, we're actively recreating the neural patterns associated with shame, fear, and self-attack. Dr. Rick Hanson's research shows that negative experiences create lasting neural pathways much more quickly than positive ones. This evolutionary adaptation, designed to help us avoid life-threatening dangers, becomes maladaptive in our modern world, where psychological threats, like feelings of unworthiness, trigger the same neural responses as physical dangers. But here's the hopeful news. We can consciously choose to strengthen new neural pathways through intentional narrative revision. Each time we tell ourselves a more compassionate and truthful story about our past, we're literally rewiring our brains for greater resilience and self-acceptance. The default mode network and self-story. Neuroscientists have identified a brain network called the default mode network, DMN, that becomes active when we're not focused on external tasks. This network is heavily involved in self-referential thinking, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what our lives mean, and how we fit into the world. In people struggling with self-condemnation, the DMN shows characteristic patterns: hyperactivity in regions associated with self-criticism and rumination, combined with reduced activity in areas linked to self-compassion and perspective-taking. The good news is that these patterns can be changed through targeted interventions, including narrative therapy techniques. The witness perspective. From prosecutor to compassionate observer. One of the most transformative shifts in the self-forgiveness journey is moving from being your own prosecutor to becoming your own compassionate witness. This doesn't mean becoming permissive or avoiding accountability. It means learning to see your past actions with the same balanced perspective you might bring to understanding a close friend's struggles. The prosecutor perspective, self-condemnation, focuses exclusively on evidence of guilt and wrongdoing, interprets ambiguous situations in the most damaging way possible, seeks punishment and believes suffering is deserved and necessary, views mistakes as evidence of fundamental character flaws, offers no hope for redemption or change. The witness perspective, self-compassion, sees the full context of events, including circumstances and intentions, interprets situations with balance and nuance, seeks understanding and believes growth is possible, views mistakes as part of the human learning process, offers hope for healing and transformation. The observing self. Buddhist psychology and modern psychotherapy both recognize the existence of what's called the observing self, the part of our consciousness that can step back and observe our thoughts, emotions, and experiences without being overwhelmed by them. This observing self is naturally compassionate and wise. It's only when we're identified with our thoughts and emotions that we lose perspective and become harsh with ourselves. Cultivating the observing self. The mindful awareness practice. When you notice self-condemning thoughts arising, try this simple exercise. Pause and take 3 deep breaths. Say to yourself, I notice that I'm having the thought that I'm a terrible person, or whatever the specific thought is. Ask, is this thought helpful? Is it completely true? What would I say to a friend having this thought? Consciously choose a more balanced and compassionate perspective. This practice helps create space between you and your thoughts, allowing your wise, compassionate self to emerge. The art of truthful compassion. Beyond positive thinking. Compassionate reframing isn't about replacing negative thoughts with positive ones or pretending that harmful actions weren't harmful. It's about finding a more complete and truthful perspective that includes both accountability and compassion, both acknowledgement of harm and recognition of your inherent worth. The difference? Positive thinking, often unhelpful, that mistake wasn't really that bad. Everything happens for a reason. I'm sure it all worked out fine. Truthful compassion, healing. That mistake caused real harm, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I was also dealing with significant stress and had limited emotional resources at the time. I've learned from this experience and am committed to making different choices in the future. My worth as a human being isn't determined by my worst moments. The both and approach. One of the most powerful tools for compassionate reframing is learning to hold multiple truths simultaneously rather than falling into either or thinking. I made a harmful mistake and I was doing my best with the resources I had at the time. I hurt someone I love and I am capable of growth and change. I fell short of my values and I am still inherently worthy of love and respect. I need to take responsibility for my actions and I don't need to carry shame about my identity. I caused pain and I have also brought joy and value to the world. This both and approach allows us to maintain accountability while avoiding the all or nothing thinking that fuels self-condemnation. Practical techniques for narrative transformation. The compassionate friend exercise. One of the most effective techniques for shifting perspective is to imagine how you would respond to a dear friend who had made the same mistake you're condemning yourself for. Step 1. The friend's situation. Write out your regret as if it happened to your best friend instead of you. Use their name and describe the situation from their perspective. Step 2. Your natural response. Write out how you would naturally respond to your friend. What would you say? How would you comfort them? What perspective would you offer? Step 3. The application. Now read your compassionate response and ask, why do I deserve less compassion than I would naturally give my friend? What would it mean to treat myself with this same kindness? Most people are shocked to discover how naturally compassionate they are toward others' mistakes while being ruthlessly harsh with themselves. The younger self-visualization. This technique involves visualizing yourself at the age when the regretful event occurred and responding to that younger self with the wisdom and compassion of your current self. The process. Find a quiet space and close your eyes. Visualize yourself at the age when the event occurred. See that younger self clearly, their appearance, their circumstances, their emotional state. Approach that younger self with love and understanding. Tell them what you wish someone had told you at the time. Offer them the wisdom you've gained since then. Hold them with the same compassion you would show any young person struggling with difficult circumstances. Many people find this exercise profoundly healing, as it allows them to separate their current wisdom from their past limitations and respond to their younger self with appropriate tenderness. The context meditation. This practice involves systematically exploring all the contextual factors that contributed to your past actions, helping you develop a more complete understanding of why you made the choices you did. Contextual categories to explore. Emotional context. What emotions were you experiencing? How intense were these emotions? Did you have healthy ways to process these feelings? Were you emotionally overwhelmed or dysregulated? Mental, cognitive context. What was your mental state at the time? Were you dealing with depression, anxiety, or other mental health challenges? What was your level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence? What cognitive biases or blind spots might have affected your judgment? Physical context. What was your physical health like? Were you sleep deprived, ill, or under physical stress? Were you under the influence of substances that impaired your judgment? How might your physical state have affected your decision-making? Social context. What social pressures were you facing? Who were you surrounded by, and what influences were they having? What cultural or family expectations were you trying to meet? Were you receiving adequate social support? Developmental context. How old were you, and what was your level of maturity? What life experiences had you had that could inform better choices? What developmental challenges were you navigating? What models of healthy behavior had you been exposed to? Spiritual, existential context. What was your sense of meaning and purpose at the time? Were you dealing with existential questions or spiritual struggles? Did you have a supportive spiritual or philosophical framework? How connected did you feel to something larger than yourself? The Growth Timeline Exercise. This powerful exercise helps you recognize how much you've grown and changed since your past mistakes, reinforcing your capacity for transformation and making it easier to respond to your past self with compassion. The process: create a timeline from the date of your regretted action to the present. Mark significant moments of growth, learning, and positive change. Note new skills, insights, and capacities you've developed. Identify ways you've helped others or contributed positively to the world. Recognize how you would handle similar situations differently now. Acknowledge the wisdom and maturity you've gained through your experiences. This exercise often reveals that the person who made the mistake and the person doing the exercise are significantly different, not just in knowledge and skills, but in emotional capacity, self-awareness, and wisdom. Working with resistant thoughts, the inner critic's function. As you begin practicing compassionate reframing, you'll likely encounter resistance from what psychologists call the inner critic, the internal voice that insists harsh self-judgment is necessary and deserved. This voice often becomes louder when we first try to extend compassion to ourselves. Understanding the inner critic's function can help reduce its power. This voice typically develops early in life as a protection mechanism, a way to avoid rejection, failure, or harm by maintaining impossibly high standards and vigilant self-monitoring. Common inner critic messages: you don't deserve compassion because what you did was unforgivable. Being compassionate toward yourself means you're not taking responsibility. You need harsh self-criticism to ensure you don't make the same mistakes again. Other people suffered because of your actions, so you should suffer too. Forgiving yourself means you don't care about the harm you caused. Responding to the inner critic. When these resistant thoughts arise, try responding with curiosity rather than argument. The curious response: thank you, inner critic, for trying to protect me from future mistakes. I notice you're afraid that self-compassion means I won't learn or grow. What are you trying to protect me from right now? How has harsh self-criticism been working for me so far? Is there a way to stay accountable while also treating myself with kindness? This approach acknowledges the inner critic's protective intention while gently challenging its methods. The wisdom of self-compassion. Research consistently shows that self-compassionate people are actually more motivated to change and improve than those who rely on self-criticism. They're more likely to take responsibility for their actions without becoming overwhelmed by shame, learn from their mistakes rather than ruminate on them, persist in pursuing positive goals even after setbacks, maintain emotional stability during challenging times, treat others with greater compassion and understanding. Self-compassion isn't the enemy of growth. It's the foundation for sustainable positive change. The gradual transformation. Patience with the process. Shifting from self-condemnation to self-compassion is not a linear process. You may have days where the new perspective feels natural and transformative, followed by days where old patterns of self-attack return with full force. This is completely normal and doesn't indicate failure. It indicates that you're doing the deep work of rewiring neural pathways that may have been established for decades. Signs of progress to look for: catching self-condemning thoughts more quickly, spending less time ruminating on past mistakes, feeling more willing to take healthy risks or try new things, experiencing greater emotional stability and resilience, finding it easier to apologize and make amends when appropriate, feeling more compassionate toward others' mistakes and struggles, having a sense of lightness or relief, even if temporary. The ripple effect. As you become more skilled at compassionate reframing, you'll likely notice positive changes rippling out into other areas of your life. People who learn to see themselves with compassion often report improved relationships as they become less defensive and more emotionally available, greater creativity and willingness to take beneficial risks, increased energy as they spend less mental resources on self-attack, better physical health as chronic stress levels decrease, enhanced ability to support others without becoming overwhelmed, a stronger sense of purpose and meaning in life. Preparing for integration. The work of compassionate reframing creates the foundation for the deeper healing work ahead. In the next chapter, we'll explore practical, research-based techniques for actively releasing old wounds and creating new patterns of self-relationship. As we close this chapter, take a moment to acknowledge the courage it takes to see yourself with new eyes. You're not just changing your thoughts, you're changing your entire relationship with yourself. This is some of the most important and transformative work a human being can do. Remember, the stories you tell yourself about your past have the power to imprison you or set you free. Every time you choose compassion over condemnation, understanding over judgment, and growth over shame, you're writing a new chapter in the story of your life, one where healing is possible, transformation is real, and your inherent worth shines through even your darkest moments. The narrative is shifting. The healing has begun. Now let's learn to make it last. Chapter 4: Practical Steps to Release and Reconcile. Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a constant attitude. Martin Luther King, Jr. The Bridge Between Understanding and Freedom. Dr. James Prochaska's groundbreaking research on behavior change reveals a crucial insight. Knowledge alone is rarely sufficient for transformation. We can understand intellectually that we deserve self-forgiveness, recognize the patterns that keep us trapped, and even shift our perspective about past events. But until we take concrete action to release old wounds and establish new patterns, we remain stuck in the contemplation stage of change. Sarah, a therapist who had spent years helping others heal from trauma, found herself paralyzed by a mistake she'd made early in her career. Despite understanding all the theory behind self-forgiveness and having successfully helped hundreds of clients develop self-compassion, she couldn't seem to apply these principles to her own situation. It wasn't until she engaged in specific, structured practices for release and reconciliation that she finally began to experience the freedom she'd been seeking. This chapter provides the practical tools and techniques that bridge the gap between understanding and liberation, research-backed methods for actively processing difficult emotions, releasing energetic patterns of shame and regret, and creating new neural pathways of self-acceptance. The physiology of release. Understanding trapped emotions. Modern research in trauma therapy, particularly the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and Dr. Peter Levine, shows us that difficult experiences aren't just stored in our minds, they're held in our bodies as patterns of tension, constriction, and dysregulation. When we hold on to shame and self-condemnation for years or decades, these emotions become literally embodied, affecting our posture, breathing, immune function, and overall vitality. Signs of embodied self-condemnation: chronic tension in the chest, throat, or shoulders, shallow or restricted breathing patterns, tendency to make yourself small or collapse inward, digestive issues or chronic inflammation, sleep disturbances or chronic fatigue, hypervigilance or difficulty relaxing, disconnection from physical sensations or needs. The nervous system and self-forgiveness. Our autonomic nervous system plays a crucial role in both holding on to trauma and releasing it. When we're trapped in cycles of self-condemnation, we're often stuck in what Dr. Stephen Porges calls a dorsal vagal state, a shutdown response characterized by disconnection, numbness, and despair. True self-forgiveness involves helping our nervous system shift into what Porges terms ventral vagal activation, a state of safety, connection, and openness where healing naturally occurs. This shift cannot be forced through willpower alone. It requires specific practices that communicate safety to our deepest biological systems. The letter to your past self. The power of written expression. Research in expressive writing, pioneered by Dr. James Pennebaker, demonstrates that writing about difficult experiences has profound effects on both mental and physical health. People who engage in structured expressive writing show improved immune function and reduced inflammatory markers, decreased symptoms of depression and anxiety, better sleep quality and overall well-being, enhanced problem-solving abilities and emotional regulation, increased sense of meaning and coherence in their life story. The letter writing exercise combines the benefits of expressive writing with the compassionate reframing work we explored in the previous chapter. The complete letter writing process. Phase 1. Preparation. Choose a quiet time and space where you won't be interrupted for at least 30 to 45 minutes. Have paper and pen available. Handwriting engages different neural pathways than typing and often feels more personal and connecting. Take a few deep breaths and set an intention for this practice, not to fix or change anything, but simply to connect with your past self with honesty and compassion. Phase 2. The letter of understanding. Begin writing a letter to yourself at the age when your regretted action occurred. Include acknowledgement of their experience. I see how much pain you were in at that time. I understand that you were dealing with. I recognize that you didn't have the tools or support to. Validation of their intentions. I know you were trying to. I can see that you wanted to. Your heart was in the right place when you. Context and compassion. Given everything you were dealing with, it makes sense that you were doing the best you could with. It's understandable that someone in your situation would. Wisdom and guidance. What I wish I could tell you is, if I could go back, I would help you see that. Here's what I've learned that might have helped you then. Forgiveness and acceptance. I forgive you for. You are not defined by this mistake. I love and accept you exactly as you are. Phase 3. The letter of gratitude. Write a second letter thanking your past self for their struggles and lessons. This might seem counterintuitive, but research shows that finding meaning in difficult experiences is one of the most powerful predictors of resilience and well-being. Thank them for the strength they showed in surviving difficult circumstances, the lessons their mistakes taught you, the compassion their struggles helped you develop for others, the wisdom you've gained through their experiences, the growth that emerged from their challenges. Phase 4. Integration. After writing both letters, take time to sit quietly and notice what you're feeling. You might experience sadness, relief, anger, compassion, or a mixture of emotions. All of these responses are valid and important. Consider keeping these letters somewhere safe where you can return to them when old patterns of self-condemnation arise. Advanced letter writing variations. The dialogue technique. After writing your letter, write a response from your past self. What would they want you to know? What would they say in response to your compassion? This creates a healing dialogue between your current wisdom and your past struggles. The family letter. If your regret involves family relationships, consider writing letters to other family members from that time period, including letters of understanding and compassion for their struggles and limitations as well. The forgiveness chain. Write letters of forgiveness to everyone involved in the situation, including yourself. This creates a comprehensive pattern of release and understanding. Visualization and imagery techniques. The neuroscience of visualization. Brain imaging studies show that when we vividly imagine experiences, we activate many of the same neural networks involved in actually living those experiences. This means that visualization can be a powerful tool for creating new neural pathways associated with self-forgiveness and healing. Dr. Tara Brach's research on radical acceptance shows that visualization techniques specifically designed for self-forgiveness can significantly reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety while increasing self-compassion and emotional resilience. The Healing Light Visualization. This technique combines elements of mindfulness meditation with active visualization to help release trapped emotions and create new patterns of self-relationship. The complete process. Preparation, 5 minutes. Sit comfortably with your eyes closed. Take several deep breaths, allowing your body to relax with each exhale. Set an intention to be open to healing and release. Accessing the memory, 5 minutes. Gently bring to mind the situation you're working to forgive yourself for. Don't try to change or fix anything. Simply allow the memory to be present. Notice any physical sensations, emotions, or thoughts that arise without trying to push them away. Connecting with your past self, 5 minutes. Visualize yourself at the age when this event occurred. See them clearly, their appearance, their posture, their facial expression. Notice what they might be feeling or needing. Approach them with the same gentleness you would show a hurt child. The Healing Light, 10 minutes. Imagine a warm, golden light above your head, a light that represents unconditional love, wisdom, and healing. See this light slowly descending, first surrounding your present self with warmth and acceptance. Feel this light healing any places in your current body where you hold tension or pain about this situation. Now watch as this healing light extends to your past self, surrounding them with the same unconditional love and acceptance. See the light dissolving any shame, fear, or pain they're carrying. Watch as their posture softens and their face relaxes. They are completely loved and accepted, exactly as they are. The integration, 5 minutes. See your past self walking toward your present self, surrounded by this healing light. Embrace them with complete love and acceptance. Feel them becoming integrated into your being, not erased or changed, but fully accepted and loved. You are one person who has learned and grown through many experiences, all of which are part of your journey. The closing, 5 minutes. Take several deep breaths, feeling the healing light now integrated throughout your entire being. Set an intention to carry this sense of self-acceptance with you throughout your day. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. The Safe Space Visualization. This technique helps create an internal refuge where self-compassion can flourish, particularly useful for people whose past mistakes occurred in environments that felt unsafe or unsupportive. Creating your internal safe space. Imagine a place where you feel completely safe and accepted. This might be a real place from your life, a place from nature, or an entirely imagined sanctuary. Fill this space with everything that represents comfort, beauty, and love to you. Invite your past self to join you in this safe space. Spend time with them here, offering the acceptance and support they needed at the time. Create a ritual of release, perhaps writing their regrets on paper and watching them dissolve in a gentle fire, or placing their burdens in a stream that carries them away. Ritual and ceremony. The power of symbolic action. Humans have used ritual and ceremony for healing throughout history, and modern psychology is beginning to understand why these practices are so effective. Rituals engage multiple senses, create clear markers of transition, and activate what Dr. Francine Shapiro, founder of EMDR therapy, calls adaptive information processing, our natural capacity to integrate difficult experiences in healthy ways. Elements of effective self-forgiveness rituals. Acknowledgement, clearly naming what needs to be released. Expression, allowing suppressed emotions to be felt and expressed. Transformation, creating a symbolic shift from old patterns to new ones. Integration. Consciously embracing a new way of being. The burning ritual. This powerful ritual helps create a clear energetic separation between past mistakes and current identity. Materials needed: paper and pen, a fireproof bowl or container, matches or a lighter, a quiet, private space. Outdoor spaces work well if available. The process. Preparation. Set aside uninterrupted time and create a quiet, sacred space. Writing. Write down everything you're ready to release: specific regrets, self-condemning thoughts, old beliefs about yourself. Reading. Read what you've written out loud, allowing yourself to feel whatever emotions arise. Intention setting. Clearly state your intention to release these burdens and embrace self-forgiveness. The burning. Carefully burn the paper, watching as the old patterns transform into smoke and ash. Integration. Take time to sit in meditation or quiet reflection, consciously choosing new beliefs and patterns to embrace. Safety note. Always use appropriate fire safety precautions and check local regulations about burning materials. The water release ritual. Water has been used for purification and release in cultures around the world. This ritual harnesses the symbolic power of water to wash away old patterns and create space for new growth. The process. Preparation. Find a natural body of water, ocean, river, lake, or create a sacred bath at home. Intention setting. Clearly state your intention to release old patterns and embrace self-forgiveness. The release. As you enter the water or immerse yourself, visualize the water washing away all shame, regret, and self-condemnation. Affirmation. State positive affirmations about your worth and capacity for growth. Emergence. As you emerge from the water, consciously embrace your new identity as someone worthy of love and forgiveness. The planting ritual. This ritual creates a living symbol of growth and transformation, particularly powerful for people who want to honor what they've learned from their mistakes. Materials needed: a small plant or seeds, potting soil, a pot or space in the ground, water. The process. Reflection. Spend time reflecting on what you've learned from your past mistakes and how you've grown. Intention setting. As you plant the seed or transplant the plant, set an intention for continued growth and self-compassion. Nurturing. Commit to caring for this plant as a symbol of your commitment to treating yourself with kindness. Witnessing. Over time, let the plant's growth remind you of your own capacity for transformation and renewal. Somatic and body-based practices. The body's role in forgiveness. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's research shows that trauma and shame are stored in the body as much as the mind. Complete healing often requires working directly with the physical manifestations of self-condemnation, the tension patterns, breathing restrictions, and energetic blocks that keep us trapped in old patterns. Progressive muscle release for self-forgiveness. This technique combines progressive muscle relaxation with self-compassion practices to help release physical tension associated with shame and regret. The practice. Preparation. Lie down comfortably and close your eyes. Scanning. Notice areas of tension in your body, particularly the chest, throat, shoulders, and jaw. Tensing and releasing. Starting with your toes and working up, deliberately tense each muscle group for 5 seconds. Then release while saying, "I release all judgment and criticism toward myself." Compassionate touch. Place your hands on areas that hold tension and breathe self-compassion into these places. Integration. End by placing both hands on your heart and saying, "I am worthy of love and forgiveness." Breathwork for emotional release. Conscious breathing practices can help process trapped emotions and shift the nervous system toward states more conducive to self-forgiveness. The self-compassion breath. Inhale for 4 counts while thinking, "I acknowledge my pain." Hold for 4 counts while thinking, "I am not alone in my struggles." Exhale for 6 counts while thinking, I offer myself kindness and forgiveness. 4. Repeat for 10 to 15 cycles, allowing each breath to deepen your sense of self-acceptance. The Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT, tapping. Research shows that EFT, a technique combining elements of cognitive therapy with acupressure, can be particularly effective for releasing trapped emotions associated with shame and self-condemnation. The self-forgiveness tapping sequence: identify the intensity, rate the intensity of your self-condemnation on a scale of 1 to 10. The setup statement: while tapping the karate chop point, repeat, even though I made this mistake and I'm struggling to forgive myself, I deeply and completely accept myself. The tapping sequence: tap each point while repeating, this self-condemnation, this guilt, this shame, I'm willing to release this, I choose to forgive myself. The positive round: tap each point while repeating affirmations like, I am worthy of forgiveness, I choose self-compassion, I am learning and growing. Reassess. Rate the intensity again and continue until you reach a 2 or lower. Movement and expression practices. Dance and movement therapy. Research in embodied cognition shows that our physical postures and movements directly influence our emotional states. Shame typically manifests as inward collapse, hunched shoulders, and restricted breathing. Conscious movement can help release these patterns and create new embodied experiences of self-acceptance. The liberation dance practice: start small, begin with gentle movements, rolling your shoulders, extending your arms, lifting your chest, follow your body. Allow your body to move in whatever way feels natural, without judgment or performance. Express emotions. If anger, sadness, or other emotions arise, let them move through your body, claim your space. Gradually expand your movements, taking up more space, reaching in all directions. Celebrate. End with movements that feel celebratory or victorious. Jump, raise your arms, dance with joy. Voice and sound release. The voice is intimately connected to our sense of power and authenticity. Many people who struggle with self-forgiveness have learned to silence their voices, both literally and metaphorically. Sound release techniques. Humming. Start with gentle humming to activate the vagus nerve and create feelings of safety. Toning. Make vowel sounds, r, o, u, to release tension in the chest and throat. Affirmations. Speak self-compassionate statements aloud with increasing volume and conviction. Singing. Choose songs that express your journey from pain to healing. Shouting. In appropriate settings, allow yourself to shout out your frustrations and then your affirmations. Integration and maintenance. Creating a personal practice. The techniques presented in this chapter are most effective when practiced consistently rather than used as one-time interventions. Research shows that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways, requires repetition and consistency. Designing your self-forgiveness practice. Daily practices: 5 to 10 minutes, morning self-compassion meditation, evening gratitude and self-acknowledgement, compassionate self-talk check-ins throughout the day. Weekly practices: 20 to 30 minutes, journaling or letter writing exercises, visualization or guided imagery sessions, movement or voice work. Monthly practices: 45 to 60 minutes, ritual or ceremony work, comprehensive self-assessment and perspective work, planning and goal setting from a place of self-acceptance. Working with setbacks. It's crucial to understand that setbacks are a normal part of the self-forgiveness journey. Research on behavior change shows that people typically experience multiple cycles of progress and regression before establishing new patterns permanently. Common setbacks and responses. Trigger events. When new mistakes or failures occur, they may temporarily reactivate old patterns of self-condemnation. Anniversary reactions. Dates associated with past regrets may bring up intense emotions, stress and vulnerability. During times of high stress, old coping patterns often resurface: comparison and judgment. Exposure to others' success or criticism may trigger self-attack. Compassionate response to setbacks. Normalize the experience. Remember that setbacks are part of the healing process, not evidence of failure. Return to basics. Use your foundational practices to restore balance and perspective. Seek support. Reach out to trusted friends, family, or professionals who understand your journey. Learn and adjust. Consider what triggered the setback and adjust your practices accordingly. Recommit. Gently recommit to your healing journey without self-punishment. The ripple effects. As you establish consistent practices of self-forgiveness and self-compassion, you'll likely notice positive changes extending far beyond your relationship with your past mistakes. Personal changes, increased emotional resilience and stability, greater willingness to take healthy risks and pursue meaningful goals, improved sleep quality and physical health, enhanced creativity and problem-solving abilities, stronger sense of personal agency and empowerment. Relational changes, deeper capacity for intimacy and vulnerability, increased empathy and compassion for others' struggles, better boundary setting and conflict resolution skills, reduced defensiveness and reactivity in relationships, greater ability to offer genuine apologies and make amends. Professional and creative changes. Increased willingness to innovate and try new approaches, better leadership and mentorship capabilities, enhanced ability to learn from feedback without becoming defensive, greater persistence in pursuing challenging goals, improved decision-making under pressure. Preparing for transformation. The practices in this chapter provide concrete tools for actively releasing old wounds and establishing new patterns of self-relationship. However, true transformation requires not just healing from the past, but consciously creating a new future based on self-acceptance and wisdom. In our final chapter, we'll explore how to take the self-forgiveness you've cultivated and use it as a foundation for creating a life of purpose, meaning, and joy. We'll examine how to prevent future cycles of self-condemnation while maintaining healthy accountability, and how to use your hard-won wisdom to contribute to others' healing and growth. Remember, healing is not a destination but a way of traveling. Every practice session, every moment of self-compassion, every choice to respond to yourself with kindness rather than cruelty is a victory worth celebrating. You are not just healing old wounds, you are learning to live from a place of fundamental self-acceptance and love. The tools are in your hands. The path is clear. Now let's explore how to walk it with confidence and joy. Chapter 5. Embracing the future, living unburdened. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. Rumi, The Transformation Threshold. Dr. Marina Chen remembers the exact moment she realized something fundamental had shifted. She was sitting in a conference room where she'd just made a significant error in a presentation to the board of directors. 2 years earlier, such a mistake would have sent her into a spiral of self-condemnation that lasted weeks. She would have replayed the moment obsessively, berated herself for being unprepared, and questioned her competence as a leader. But this time was different. She felt the familiar flutter of embarrassment and disappointment, acknowledged the mistake clearly, and then heard herself think, "I'm human. I made an error. I'll learn from this and do better next time." The self-compassion felt so natural, so automatic, that she almost didn't recognize the profound shift it represented. Marina had crossed what researchers call the transformation threshold, the point where self-forgiveness moves from being a conscious practice to becoming an integrated way of being in the world. The neuroscience of sustained change. From practice to integration. Recent advances in neuroplasticity research reveal fascinating insights about how sustained practices of self-forgiveness literally reshape our brains. Dr. Richard Davidson's work at the University of Wisconsin shows that people who maintain consistent self-compassion practices for 6 months or more develop measurable changes in brain structure, including increased gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex, associated with emotional regulation and decision-making, enhanced connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, improving the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively, reduced activity in the default mode network during rest, indicating less rumination and self-referential worry, increased activity in brain regions associated with empathy and compassion, both towards self and others. These neurological changes create what researchers call trait-level alterations, permanent shifts in how we naturally respond to challenges, mistakes, and setbacks. The self-compassion advantage. People who have successfully integrated self-forgiveness into their daily lives demonstrate what Dr. Kristin Neff calls the self-compassion advantage, a set of psychological and behavioral patterns that create upward spirals of growth and well-being, enhanced emotional regulation, quick recovery from setbacks and disappointments, ability to feel difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them, natural tendency toward optimism and resilience, reduced anxiety and depression symptoms, improved relationships, greater capacity for intimacy and vulnerability, increased empathy and understanding toward others' struggles, better conflict resolution and communication skills, reduced defensiveness and blame in relationships, increased performance and achievement, greater willingness to take calculated risks, enhanced creativity and innovation, improved persistence in pursuing challenging goals, better learning from feedback and mistakes, greater life satisfaction, stronger sense of meaning and purpose, increased gratitude and appreciation for life experiences, better work-life balance and self-care practices, enhanced spiritual and existential well-being, preventing future cycles of self-condemnation. The early warning system, one of the most valuable skills developed through self-forgiveness work, is the ability to recognize the early signs of self-condemnation before they become entrenched patterns. This early warning system allows for quick intervention and prevents minor setbacks from becoming major sources of shame and regret. Physical warning signs: tension in chest, throat, or shoulders, changes in breathing patterns, shallow, restricted, stomach tightness or digestive issues, sleep disturbances or changes in appetite, fatigue or loss of energy. Emotional warning signs: increased irritability or sensitivity to criticism, feelings of overwhelm or hopelessness, tendency to isolate from others. Loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities, increased anxiety about performance or acceptance. Cognitive warning signs: all or nothing thinking patterns, catastrophic predictions about consequences, comparison to others' achievements or behavior, rehashing past mistakes or failures, difficulty making decisions due to fear of making wrong choices. Behavioral warning signs: procrastination or avoidance of challenges, perfectionist behaviors or excessive checking, seeking reassurance from others repeatedly, engaging in self-destructive or self-sabotaging behaviors, withdrawal from relationships or social situations. The circuit breaker response: once you recognize these early warning signs, having a prepared response can prevent the escalation into full self-condemnation cycles. Think of this as a circuit breaker that interrupts the destructive pattern before it gains momentum. The stop technique: stop what you're doing and take 3 deep breaths, tune in to what you're feeling and thinking without judgment, offer yourself the same compassion you'd give a good friend, proceed with conscious intention rather than automatic reaction. The compassionate check-in: acknowledge, I notice I'm being hard on myself right now. Validate. This is a difficult situation, and it makes sense that I'm struggling. Normalize. Everyone makes mistakes and faces challenges. Support. What do I need right now to take care of myself? Action. Take one small step based on self-compassion rather than self-criticism. Building resilient systems. Creating sustainable change requires building what researchers call resilient systems, structures and practices that support well-being even under stress. These systems operate at multiple levels: personal systems, regular self-care practices and routines, healthy boundaries around work, relationships, and commitments, ongoing learning and skill development, regular reflection and self-assessment practices, emergency self-care protocols for high-stress periods. Social systems, supportive relationships with friends, family, or community, professional support when needed, therapy, coaching, mentoring, participation in groups or activities aligned with your values, regular opportunities for meaningful contribution to others, accountability partners who support your growth without judgment. Environmental systems, living and working spaces that support well-being, limiting exposure to unnecessarily stressful or toxic influences, creating reminders of your values and accomplishments, building routines that reinforce self-compassionate practices, having access to resources and tools for continued growth. The future self mindset. Becoming your own mentor. One of the most powerful outcomes of self-forgiveness work is the development of what psychologists call temporal self-continuity, the ability to see yourself as an ongoing project of growth and learning rather than being defined by any single moment or mistake. This shift creates what we might call the future self mindset, a way of thinking that naturally prevents many sources of future regret and self-condemnation. Key elements of future self-thinking: growth orientation, viewing challenges as opportunities for learning rather than tests of worth; process focus, emphasizing effort, learning, and improvement over perfect outcomes; long-term perspective, considering how today's choices affect your future self's well-being; values alignment, making decisions based on what matters most to you rather than external expectations; self-mentorship, treating yourself with the wisdom, patience, and encouragement of an ideal mentor. The wisdom integration practice. This powerful practice helps you consciously integrate the wisdom you've gained from your past experiences and apply it proactively to future decisions. Monthly wisdom integration session. Step 1. Reflection, 10 minutes. What have I learned about myself this month? What patterns or triggers have I noticed? What mistakes or challenges became opportunities for growth? How have I demonstrated self-compassion and wisdom? Step 2. Integration, 10 minutes. What insights do I want to remember and apply going forward? What advice would I give my future self based on this month's experiences? How can I use what I've learned to prevent future suffering? What systems or practices do I want to adjust or improve? Step 3. Intention setting, 10 minutes. How do I want to show up in the coming month? What specific practices will support my continued growth? How can I be proactive about potential challenges? What support do I need to maintain my well-being? Step 4. Future self letter, 10 minutes. Write a brief letter to yourself 6 months in the future, sharing your current insights and offering encouragement and wisdom for whatever challenges may arise. Decision-making from self-compassion. As self-forgiveness becomes integrated into your way of being, it naturally transforms how you make decisions. Instead of choosing based on fear, obligation, or the need to prove yourself, you begin making choices from a place of wisdom and self-care. The self-compassionate decision matrix. For significant decisions, consider these questions. Alignment questions. Does this choice align with my deepest values and priorities? How does this decision honor both my needs and the needs of others? Am I choosing this from love or from fear? Growth questions. What would this choice teach me about myself and life? How might this decision contribute to my long-term growth and well-being? What would I advise someone I care about in this situation? Impact questions. How might this choice affect my future self's happiness and peace? What are the potential consequences, both positive and challenging? How can I make this decision in a way that minimizes future regret? Wisdom questions. What does my past experience tell me about similar choices? How can I honor the lessons I've learned from previous mistakes? What would my wisest, most compassionate self choose? Creating your personal blueprint for sustained self-compassion. The 4 pillars of sustainable change. Research shows that people who successfully maintain self-forgiveness practices over years and decades typically organize their efforts around 4 key pillars. Pillar 1: daily practices. Small, consistent actions that reinforce self-compassionate attitudes and responses. Examples: morning intention setting or self-compassion meditation, evening gratitude and self-acknowledgement practices, regular check-ins with physical and emotional needs, mindful transitions between activities, compassionate self-talk throughout the day. Pillar 2: weekly reflection. Regular opportunities for deeper self-examination and course correction. Examples: weekly journaling or reflection sessions. Time in nature for perspective and renewal. Creative expression or artistic practices. Physical activities that promote embodied well-being. Social connections that support authentic sharing. Pillar 3: monthly integration. Broader perspective taking and adjustment of systems and practices. Examples: monthly wisdom integration sessions, described above, review and adjustment of goals and priorities, assessment of relationships and boundaries, evaluation of environmental factors affecting well-being, planning for anticipated challenges or transitions. Pillar 4: annual visioning. Long-term perspective and intentional life design from a place of self-acceptance. Examples: annual retreat or intensive self-reflection period, major life visioning and planning sessions, review of core values and life direction, assessment of major relationships and commitments, setting intentions for continued growth and contribution. Customizing your blueprint. Your personal blueprint should reflect your unique personality, lifestyle, circumstances, and preferences. Some people thrive with structured, scheduled practices, while others prefer more spontaneous approaches. Some find group support essential, while others do their best work in solitude. Questions for blueprint customization. Personality factors. Am I more introverted or extroverted in my processing style? Do I prefer structured routines or flexible approaches? What time of day am I most emotionally available for inner work? Do I learn better through reading, discussion, movement, or creative expression? Lifestyle factors. What realistic amount of time can I commit to these practices? How can I integrate self-compassion work into my existing routines? What environmental factors support or hinder my well-being? Who in my life can provide support and accountability? Learning style factors. What practices have been most effective for me so far? What resistance or challenges have I encountered, and how can I work with them? What modifications would make these practices more appealing or accessible? How can I create variety to maintain engagement over time? The evolution principle. Your self-forgiveness practice should evolve as you grow and change. What serves you well in early stages of healing may need adjustment as you develop greater stability and integration. Be willing to experiment, modify, and even abandon practices that no longer serve you. Signs your practice needs evolution. Practices feel stale or routine rather than meaningful. You're going through the motions without genuine engagement. Life circumstances have changed significantly. You've developed new interests or priorities. You feel ready for deeper or more challenging work. Your relationship with yourself has fundamentally shifted. Evolution strategies. Regularly assess and adjust your practices. Seek out new teachers, books, or resources. Join groups or communities focused on continued growth. Take on service or mentorship roles to deepen your understanding. Integrate new modalities or approaches as you discover them. The gift of your journey. Transforming wounds into wisdom. One of the most profound aspects of completing a self-forgiveness journey is recognizing how your deepest wounds have become sources of your greatest wisdom and compassion. The mistakes you once condemned yourself for have taught you lessons you couldn't have learned any other way. The pain you once thought would destroy you has become the foundation for unprecedented levels of empathy and understanding. This transformation isn't about being grateful for trauma or pretending that painful experiences were meant to be. Rather, it's about recognizing your remarkable capacity to create meaning, wisdom, and beauty from even the most difficult experiences. Becoming a source of healing for others. People who have successfully integrated self-forgiveness often find themselves naturally becoming sources of healing and support for others who are struggling with similar challenges. This isn't necessarily a formal role. It may simply be the way your presence, perspective, and way of being in the world offers hope and possibility to those still trapped in cycles of self-condemnation. Ways your healing serves others. Modeling possibility. Your very existence demonstrates that healing and transformation are possible, offering perspective. Your hard-won wisdom can provide valuable guidance to others facing similar struggles, creating safety. Your self-acceptance allows others to be more authentic and vulnerable, providing support. Your understanding of the healing journey makes you a valuable companion for others, inspiring action. Your transformation can motivate others to begin their own healing work. The ripple effect of self-compassion. Research consistently shows that self-compassion has positive ripple effects that extend far beyond the individual. People who practice self-forgiveness raise more emotionally healthy children who have higher self-esteem and better emotional regulation skills, create more positive work environments that encourage innovation, learning, and authentic collaboration, contribute to stronger communities through increased volunteerism and civic engagement, model emotional intelligence that helps others develop similar skills, reduce intergenerational trauma by breaking cycles of self-criticism and perfectionism. Living the questions. The ongoing journey. As we near the end of this book, it's important to acknowledge that self-forgiveness is not a problem to be solved once and for all, but a way of living to be practiced throughout your life. There will always be new challenges, new mistakes, new opportunities to choose compassion over condemnation. The goal is not to become someone who never struggles with self-criticism, but to become someone who knows how to respond to those struggles with wisdom, kindness, and skillful action. Essential questions for ongoing growth. Rather than providing final answers, let's close this chapter with essential questions that can guide your continued journey. Daily questions. How can I treat myself with kindness today? What do I need to feel supported and cared for? How can I learn from today's experiences without judging them? Weekly questions. What patterns am I noticing in my self-talk and behavior? How can I adjust my practices to better serve my well-being? What support do I need to maintain my growth? Monthly questions. How have I grown in my relationship with myself? What wisdom have I gained that I want to remember and integrate? How is my healing serving others in my life? Annual questions. How has my journey of self-forgiveness transformed me this year? What do I want to focus on in my continued growth? How can I use my healing to contribute to the healing of others? The practice continues. The work of self-forgiveness is never truly finished. It's an ongoing practice of choosing love over fear, growth over stagnation, and wisdom over judgment. Each day offers new opportunities to extend compassion to yourself and others, to learn from experiences without becoming trapped by them, and to create beauty and meaning from the raw material of human experience. As you continue this journey, remember that every moment of self-compassion is a victory worth celebrating. Every time you choose understanding over judgment, you're not just healing yourself, you're contributing to the healing of the world. Conclusion: the journey home to yourself. The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. Joseph Campbell. The Full Circle. As we reach the end of this book, we return to where we began, with the recognition that you are not your mistakes. But now, this isn't just an intellectual concept you're trying to convince yourself of. It's a lived truth that permeates how you move through the world, how you respond to challenges, and how you treat the tender, imperfect, beautifully human person you are. The journey of self-forgiveness is ultimately a journey home to yourself, to the person you were before you learned to be your own harshest critic, before you mistook your worth for your performance, before you believed that love had to be earned through perfection. What we've discovered together, the science of self-compassion. Throughout this book, we've explored how modern research confirms what wisdom traditions have taught for millennia. Treating ourselves with kindness and understanding isn't self-indulgent. It's essential for mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. Studies consistently show that self-compassionate people are more resilient, more motivated to grow and change, and more capable of forming healthy relationships. We've learned that our brains are literally rewired by practices of self-forgiveness, creating new neural pathways that support emotional regulation, stress resilience, and overall life satisfaction. The neuroplasticity research reveals that it's never too late to change deeply ingrained patterns of self-criticism and develop more compassionate ways of relating to yourself. The practical path. We've moved beyond theoretical understanding to explore concrete, evidence-based practices for healing and transformation, identifying and contextualizing the specific wounds that need healing, reframing narratives from condemnation to compassion while maintaining accountability, releasing trapped emotions through writing, visualization, ritual, and embodied practices, creating sustainable systems for ongoing self-compassion and growth, preventing future cycles of self-condemnation through early recognition and skillful response. These aren't just techniques to try once. They're tools for a lifetime of continued growth and healing. The ripple effects. Perhaps most importantly, we've discovered that self-forgiveness is never just about you. Your healing creates ripple effects that touch every person in your life and contribute to the healing of our shared world. When you learn to treat yourself with compassion, you naturally become more compassionate toward others. When you break cycles of self-condemnation, you help break intergenerational patterns of shame and criticism. When you model emotional intelligence and resilience, you give others permission to do the same. The key insights. As we conclude, let's revisit the most transformative insights from our journey. 1. You are not your mistakes. Your past actions, no matter how regrettable, do not define your essence or determine your worth. You are a human being with inherent dignity and value, regardless of your track record. Mistakes are events that happen through you, not evidence of who you fundamentally are. 2. Context matters. Every mistake, failure, or regret occurred within a specific context: your age, emotional state, available resources, stress level, and life circumstances at the time. Understanding this context doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does allow for a more complete and compassionate understanding of why it occurred. 3. Self-criticism doesn't work. Harsh self-judgment doesn't motivate positive change, it actually inhibits it. Self-compassion, by contrast, creates the psychological safety necessary for honest self-examination, learning from mistakes, and sustained behavior change. 4. Healing requires action. Understanding and insight are important, but transformation requires active practice. Whether through writing exercises, meditation, ritual work, or therapeutic support, healing happens through engagement, not just reflection. 5. Growth is ongoing. Self-forgiveness isn't a destination you reach once and for all. It's a way of traveling through life. There will always be new challenges, new opportunities to choose compassion over criticism, new invitations to extend understanding to yourself and others. 6. Your healing serves others. Personal transformation is never purely personal. Your journey towards self-forgiveness creates positive changes in your relationships, your work, your parenting, and your community involvement. Your healing becomes a gift to everyone whose life you touch. Where you are now. If you've engaged seriously with the material in this book, you're likely in a very different place than when you started reading. You may notice greater emotional resilience when facing setbacks or criticism, increased willingness to take healthy risks and pursue meaningful goals, improved relationships characterized by more authenticity and less defensiveness, enhanced creativity and problem-solving abilities freed from perfectionist constraints, deeper sense of purpose and meaning rooted in self-acceptance rather than external validation, physical health improvements as chronic stress patterns are released, natural compassion for others who are struggling with mistakes or failures. These changes may feel subtle or dramatic, sudden or gradual. Trust the process and honor whatever transformation you're experiencing. The ongoing journey. Maintaining your gains. The work you've done to heal old wounds and develop self-compassion requires ongoing attention and care. Like physical fitness, emotional and psychological well-being is maintained through consistent practice rather than achieved once and forgotten. Daily practices keep you connected to your intention to treat yourself with kindness. Weekly reflections help you notice patterns and adjust your approach as needed. Monthly integrations allow for deeper processing and course corrections. Annual visioning keeps you connected to your larger purposes and values. Remember, consistency matters more than perfection. A few minutes of genuine self-compassion practice daily is more valuable than occasional lengthy sessions. Deepening your practice. As your self-forgiveness practice matures, you may find yourself drawn to deeper levels of exploration and healing. This might involve exploring family patterns and intergenerational healing, addressing trauma that underlies self-condemnation patterns, developing spiritual practices that support your continued growth, engaging in service to others who are on similar healing journeys, pursuing professional development in fields related to healing and growth, creating art, writing, or other expressions that capture and share your journey. Let your curiosity and inner wisdom guide you toward the next phases of your growth. Sharing your gifts. One of the most fulfilling aspects of healing is discovering how your journey can serve others. This doesn't require becoming a therapist or workshop leader. It may simply involve being more emotionally available to friends and family members who are struggling. Modeling healthy responses to mistakes and setbacks in your daily life. Sharing your story when appropriate with others who might benefit from hearing it. Creating environments where others feel safe to be imperfect and authentic. Supporting organizations or causes related to mental health and emotional well-being. Raising children, if applicable, with greater emotional intelligence and self-acceptance. Trust that your very presence in the world, transformed by self-forgiveness, is already a contribution to the healing of others. A personal message. As the author of this book, I want to acknowledge the courage it takes to embark on a journey of self-forgiveness. It would be much easier to stay stuck in familiar patterns of self-criticism than to risk the vulnerability of genuine self-compassion. The fact that you've read this far, engaged with these concepts, and begun this work speaks to your fundamental commitment to growth and healing. You may not feel dramatically different yet. You may still struggle with old patterns of self-condemnation. You may wonder if real change is possible for you. These doubts are normal and don't indicate failure. They indicate that you're doing the deep work of transformation, which is rarely smooth or linear. Please be patient with yourself. Trust the process. Celebrate small victories. And remember that every moment of self-compassion, however brief, is rewiring your brain and creating new possibilities for your life. Final reflections: the paradox of self-forgiveness. One of the beautiful paradoxes of self-forgiveness is that the more deeply we accept ourselves, including our mistakes, limitations, and imperfections, the more naturally we grow and change. Self-acceptance doesn't lead to complacency. It creates the psychological safety necessary for honest self-examination and sustainable transformation. When we stop attacking ourselves for being human, we become more fully human. When we stop demanding perfection from ourselves, we become more effective and creative. When we stop withholding love until we've earned it, we discover that love was always available. The gift to future generations. The work you're doing to heal your relationship with yourself will impact generations to come. Children who grow up around adults who practice self-compassion learn that it's safe to make mistakes, that love doesn't depend on performance, and that growth and learning are more important than perfection. Your healing breaks cycles of shame and criticism that may have been passed down for generations. Your self-forgiveness becomes a gift not just to your current self, but to all the future relationships you'll have and all the lives you'll touch. The return to wonder. Perhaps the most beautiful outcome of self-forgiveness is the return to a sense of wonder about your own life and possibilities. When you're no longer weighed down by regret and self-condemnation, when you're no longer spending enormous amounts of energy on self-attack and rumination, you have access to curiosity, creativity, and joy that may have been buried for years. You begin to see your life as an adventure rather than a test, a journey of discovery rather than a series of evaluations. You become interested in who you're becoming rather than obsessed with who you've been. The beginning. As we conclude this book, remember that endings are also beginnings. You're not finished with the journey of self-forgiveness, you're just beginning to live it. The concepts you've learned, the practices you've tried, and the insights you've gained are now part of your inner toolkit for navigating whatever challenges and opportunities lie ahead. Every day offers new chances to choose self-compassion over self-criticism, understanding over judgment, growth over stagnation. Every interaction provides opportunities to extend to yourself and others the grace that makes healing and transformation possible. You have everything you need for this journey. You have your inherent worth, your capacity for growth, your ability to learn from experience, and your natural wisdom and compassion. Most importantly, you have the recognition that you deserve the same kindness and understanding that you would naturally offer to anyone else you love. The person you were when you made those mistakes deserved compassion. The person you are now deserves compassion. The person you're becoming deserves compassion. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter written with wisdom, kindness, and the deep knowing that you are worthy of love exactly as you are. Welcome home to yourself.